Testing mic check 1 2 3. So in regards to skate park design and the future of skate park design, per the meeting that occurred on Wednesday, May 1st, regarding the Brooklyn Skate Garden to be developed at Mount Prospect Park, what follows next are going to be my thoughts and my theories on diversity, equity, inclusion for skate park design, and the things that I have noticed over the last 20 years. I think first and foremost, a lot of skate parks are often neglected and often designed as an afterthought. So with this new skate garden at Mount Prospect Park, I think it's important to note that it is in a way an afterthought, right? This was not a site where we said, hey, nothing's happening here, let's build a skate park. So this is an existing park that's already being utilized to some extent, though it definitely needs upkeep and upgrade. I think the one topic, based on the conversation in the meeting room that I was in, that came up, that struck a chord with me, is quality of air. And I think that I believe that is the same issue that applies to Riverside Skate Park, because I found that Riverside Skate Park and a lot of parks end up becoming very dry and in a way desolate, and there's a lot of dust. So if I had to redesign a space like this, I would try to mitigate the amount of dust and dirt that is there and put maybe vegetation, maybe some sort of ground cover vegetation that will help, one, deal with the air quality, and secondly, deal with the flood and stormwater runoff. I think it will also help with just general aesthetic and beauty of the space. Some sort of ground cover that doesn't have to be maintained heavily, right? So that's one topic. Another topic with these parks that are developed or designed as an afterthought, meaning, again, it's not designed, and we're not designing it going, nothing's happening here, this is a vacant space, let's build a park. It's a space that's being utilized right now mostly as a sort of open free run for dogs. That being said, I think it would be amazing to include skate obstacles that are not just poured concrete, but skate obstacles that are instead masonry. Instead of concrete, I think masonry is the way to go. And masonry in the sense of marble, granite, even pavers, even stone pavers, right? Imagine this, let's say this is a 12 by 12 stone paver. I think this might be closer to maybe 16 by 16 stone paver. But let's say you had a stone paver set that was 24 by 24, or even 36 or 48 by 48, right? Some sort of large square pavers that were thick and wide enough where the park can easily be maintained, right? So let's say a paver cracks or it's damaged, you can easily lift it and replace it. And I think what's amazing about stuff like pavers is that you have the trees and the roots that go deep below the surface of the ground. So if there were ever a need for infrastructure upgrades or new draining upgrades as time progresses, you can remove a section easily and replace it and do the infrastructure upgrade, right? So that's those issues. The other issue they mentioned was heat mitigation, which I think is easily solvable with, obviously, the tree canopy. But I think what's neglected is the fact that most skate parks are not getting utilized when it rains and when there is snow or when it's cold outside. So when those things occur, I go, well, what's the point of having a skate park if it doesn't have some sort of rain or snow cover? And I think of rock climbing walls. Specifically, there's a rock climbing facility at the Brooklyn Bridge Park. And I believe the rock climbing facility at the Brooklyn Bridge Park is designed in a way where it's not fully covered, but it's also not completely sheltered from the elements. Meaning if it's cold outside, you're going to feel cold, but it is sheltered from direct rain above head. Not to say that every space in the park has to be covered, but I believe what is lacking more than any other aspect in our parks, for skate parks specifically, is some sort of shelter and protection from the elements, being cold, rain, and snow. All right, so that's some inspiration. Some other inspiration I do believe that is necessary, not just for this location, but for future generations. Ultimately, I've come to the conclusion that New York City needs its own world-class indoor skate park facility, right? And when I say indoor skate park, I'm referring to a facility that is both indoor, outdoor, almost akin to what you would see at the old Van skate park that was in Williamsburg, right on the waterfront, right? That had an indoor section and an outdoor section, but it was mostly a party venue. I think also in the future, we should develop a sort of park that incorporates facilities on the level of a YMCA, right? YMCA is not just an indoor closed facility with a gymnasium per se, but it also has housing and things of that nature. And it also offers lots of other extracurricular services for people of all ages. So that's another side topic. But ultimately, jumping back to Brooklyn Skate Garden, I think it's important to look at these particular parks and also consider, when we think of inclusion, when we think of children, too often I go to skate parks across New York City and in other jurisdictions, and I see a lot of parents with their children, and the children may be on scooters or on little toys or just free running everywhere. Even in California, I was at the Venice Beach skate park, and they're just children running up and down ramps throughout the park, where grown men and adults and even young adolescents and young children are performing high intense activities where if there were any collision, someone could get badly hurt or be killed. That's the reality of the nature of the sport when you're dealing with concrete and high speeds, right? So I think because you have so many children and parents frequenting skate parks, especially when they're a little bit empty, I think it's important to develop and design playground-esque areas of skate parks and like this skate park garden where children and the parents can participate. And as a reference point, I think Parks Department and the Skate Park Foundation should look at the following parks as things that I see as inspiration, right? So the Battery Playscapes Playground in Battery Park, I think, is a great example for some elements that we can take and use. Battery Playground, the Battery Playscapes Playground has a stone, I think it might be granite or marble slide, a stone slide, perfect for children to slide on, but it also makes for a very good skate obstacle. I also think of parks like Maloof Skate Park, right? Maloof Skate Park, to me, I actually very dislike the fact that it's called Maloof, because what we have done is we have in a way bastardized the history of that park, and that park is really supposed to be called the Astral Fountain Skate Park. So the Astral Fountain sits below what is now Maloof Skate Park, but because Maloof brothers put in a bunch of money, their name now gets branded on that park, and I think that is wrong, where someone that just has a lot of money gets to put their name on a park. Again, it's a city facility. It's not like the WAMU Theater at Madison Square Garden. It's not the crypto stadium, whatever. It should still be called the Astral Fountain Skate Parks, and I think it's important that history remain. But I'm pointing out Maloof Skate Park because Maloof was a park that attempted to take street elements across the country, not just New York, and implement them into a park design. And I think while it was a good attempt, I think it falls short and becomes more of a park. And I think, to give you an example of a park that to me mixes both nature with street park elements, I would have to turn to Philadelphia and speak about Pertains Park in Philadelphia. Pertains Park in Philadelphia, to me, is the bee's knees of a skate park that meets both natural environmental needs and is also a skate park that to me embodies a lot of the street elements that so many of us street skaters look forward to. That is a park, in all honesty, I could see myself there all day, every day, morning, noon, night, rain, sleet, snow, no matter the weather, right? That's a park I look forward to going to whenever I get down to Philadelphia. So you have Battery Park as an example, Battery Playscapes for children. And in terms of parks for children, I think it's important to also look at the interactive components, right, for children, right? I've been going to a lot of parks and I see things that teach a little bit of music. And when I say parks, I'm not talking skate parks, we're just talking playgrounds. But I see a lot of playgrounds that allow children to be interactive with things they can touch, things they can spin, things they can pull, things like braille, things like signs, and things that help them learn. Basically, imagine all of your early educational toys being implemented into playgrounds. And I've noticed that across New York City, and I think it's amazing. I think we should continue that effort, but now include it into skate park design, right? I say that because too often these kids that are in these skate parks are in very dangerous territory, and they get in the way of people actually trying to progress the sport and their skill level. So I think there should be separate sections of every skate park where children can go that probably also has soft padded matted floors that they can learn and practice with their parents. You know, maybe there's things they can hold on to. Maybe there's even like, oh, this is a good example, right? So a lot of skate parks also have, a lot of playgrounds and parks also have fitness workout areas. I think these fitness workout areas, if incorporated correctly with the skate mentality, will give children an idea. For example, you can easily put a couple of stationary skateboard type platforms with padding around it. So children who have never skateboarded before, children who have never put on roller skates or maybe inline skates, can get into this interactive workout facility, or even sometimes rehab facility for those that are injured, or those that are handy-capable, and they can practice the basic techniques of standing on a skateboard, balancing on a skateboard, tilting, rocking on a skateboard without actually moving forward or backwards or in any direction. I also want to point out at Pier 25 on the Hudson River Park, there is a structure with two giant fish, and I think it's called the Science Playground at Pier 25. So the Science Playground at Pier 25, this giant sculpted fish where children can go inside and explore it and play. I think something of that nature would be amazing for children, but imagine if it were a giant skateboard that they can walk on and explore and get to understand what goes into the wheels, the urethane, the bearings. They can understand the mathematics and science of a skateboard, and they can actually correlate how a skateboard is akin to a motor vehicle in terms of design, the axles, the trucks. And I think when people understand the sport that they're getting into, they can better adapt and grow within that sport or that culture. Same thing with inline skating. There's a lot of science to inline skating that I've only recently learned as I became a skate instructor through the Skate IA, and I think that is something else that should be implemented. Maybe it's a giant skate or a skate-like structure so that children can understand, and even parents, because parents often don't know about these activities and don't know also about the risks involved. I think that's a huge part of it, is teaching not just the sport. It's like throwing, it's basically like throwing people into the wild and saying, go ahead, go hunt, figure it out on your own. And I think we should do better as a society and as a community of activists who believe in parks and nature. So you have the Battery Playscapes, you have Paynes Park in Philly, you have Riverside Skate Park, I think being one that is got too much dusty area, and then it's also right next to the West Side Highway, so there's a lot of vehicle traffic pollution. But yes, we can't get rid of that, but I do think these are things that we should look at and say, how can we mitigate the dust? How can we improve the air quality? The Science Playground at Pier 25 I think is great. I also want to highlight the Callahan-Kelly Playground at the Broadway Junction East New York stop in Brooklyn. The Callahan-Kelly Playground, not the skate park. The skate park to me is it's whatever, right? But the Callahan-Kelly Playground in itself, with the water fountain structures, just everything from the ground, the padding, I think all of that is amazing and should be incorporated into a skate park garden, especially one that is attempting to be inclusive of different communities. When I frequent Brooklyn Museum, when I frequent Grand Army Plaza at Prospect Park, I find that, and even the Brooklyn Library, which is, when you talk about distance, right? When you talk about proximity, the children's entrance and children's section of the Brooklyn the Central Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Central Public Library. I'm not sure the right way to say that, but that library has a children's section that is directly adjacent to the stairway that leads up to Mount Prospect Park. And I think because there's so many children on that side, and then because you have Brooklyn Museum on the other side, and because there's also a playground already there in Mount Prospect Park, I think it's important that one of the key elements be that we focus on children and not try to make a park that is grandiose and fits the needs of world-class skaters. I don't believe that it's a location to try to build something huge and magnificent, but I do believe it's a location where we can start building the basic infrastructure that can be then mimicked and copied, if not countrywide, then globally, for how skate parks should be designed to include children and to include the handy-capable or the disabled. Now, as I'm speaking about the handy-capable and disabled, I myself have several injuries throughout the years from skating. I am an architect by trade. I am also an EMT. So I became an EMT for the sole purpose of being able to diagnose in a way and help heal myself when I get injured, right? So I don't have to rely on 911. So I don't have to rely on hearsay and word of mouth and friends and kids going, yo, it's definitely broken. I've been to the ER so many times thinking something was broken, only to be told that it's just a soft tissue injury and all I need to do is follow RICE, rest, ice, compression, and elevation. And 99% of the time, that is what worked for me. So I say that because I was at Pier 62, Chelsea Piers, and that bowl being a very large, deep bowl, I remember getting injured in that bowl at one point, and I had a very difficult time getting out of the bowl. So it has occurred to me that bowls that are deep and obstacles in parks that are very deep or difficult to, let's say, get into or get out of, I believe they should have some sort of step mechanism, or even, let's use the term, rock climbing wall feature, so people can in some form or fashion get in or get out, especially when they have skates strapped to their feet. Skateboarders, BMXers, scooters, every other sport except for inline skating and roller skating, we have things strapped to our feet. And if I, let's say, fall and injure my arm, like I did at Pier 62 in 2011, I broke my clavicle. I could not move really to get my skates off my feet, so I had to rely on someone else to come over to me to help me take my skates off. Luckily, I was not in any deep portion at this point when I was injured that time, because these were two separate injuries. But I say all of this because I think it's important that these bowls be designed with a way to get out of them, right? If that makes any sense. And I do think that the rock climbing phenomenon has taken the world by storm. Everyone wants to rock climb now. It's a huge pastime. REI and places like Paragon and all these places cater to rock climbing. I think rock climbing is a great pastime, but I feel like our trees, our canopies, our tree coverage, and the natural aspect, the natural things that we climb, right? So I climbed trees growing up in Trinidad just as a means of recreation and just sometimes to pick mangoes. I believe that we could add infrastructure on some of the trees in that park that will allow people to climb the tree and maybe coexist and maybe explore nature from a different point of view. I also believe that because Mount Prospect Park is so highly elevated in that entire area, the views from the top of the tree canopy to me would be mind-blowing and phenomenal, and I believe it would be amazing to design some sort of infrastructure. Maybe, I'm thinking of like the Edge NYC, the skyscraper lookout point as just an example. I'm also thinking of Sunset Park, where there is a 9/11-esque memorial, where that park and a few other spots in the city that are at one of the highest elevations in our city have vantage points throughout the city. And I think something of that nature would be really amazing if we could incorporate that into the Brooklyn Skate Garden, where maybe there's a set of stairs or some sort of rock climbing or maybe tree climbing aspect, or even a ADA ramp pathway that goes up, or maybe even an elevator, right, that goes up into one portion of the tree canopy. And this could be a feature that we possibly charge for, because to me, sustainability is not just about adding vegetation and making it eco-friendly. Sustainability to me is about finances. How can we keep this park in a condition where people want to keep coming back? How can we make it an attraction, right? You've got the library on one side, you've got Grand Army Plaza, you've got the Brooklyn Museum. All of these are huge attractions. And then you've got the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, right? And the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, as I just found out, used to be free until COVID. So after COVID, they started charging a fee. But I want, without even asking or questioning why, it was a no-brainer that they started charging a fee at Brooklyn Botanical Gardens so that they could be sustainable and they could maintain their activities, because obviously the city is not funding our parks and recreation in a way that we really should be. So that's one aspect of food for thought. But in that design, I envision something of a ramp that goes up a huge gradual curve, right? And maybe there's I don't know, maybe there's like a lookout that can maybe host, I don't know, let's say it can hold 30 people at any given time. And maybe this is a paid infrastructure where you have to pay to get into this facility or this portion, or you can maybe use a section of it where you can roll down it if you're skating, or if you're a child or parent, there's a section where maybe you can slide down it, I think that would be an amazing experience for children. And I'm thinking of, Great Adventure, and I'm thinking Coney Island. I'm thinking of how I can implement all of these little things into the park. Another point is pump tracks. Pump tracks, in my experience, after visiting the now closed park that was directly on the Domino's Sugar Factory site, that pump track to me had a number of elements that were amazing. First, it was an asphalt pump track. There was also a dirt pump track, but the asphalt pump track is something that is very inexpensive in comparison to laying out large amounts of concrete. And a pump track can be anything. A pump track can be any pathway that you so deem, and it can be as wide or as narrow, as deep or as big as you choose, and it can be for all different ages and varying skill levels depending on what you want to cater to. I do believe that location would be perfect for implementing at least some portion of pump track aesthetic. I would honestly say that it would be better for a child level to beginner level, maybe intermediate level, because pump tracks, even at the beginner level, are very, very difficult. When I say difficult, I don't mean like it's the end of the world, but what pump tracks essentially do, if you're in a gym, right? If you're doing squats, that's exactly what you're doing on a pump track. And the more squats you do, the faster you go, the more momentum you produce, and the more dangerous it becomes. But at the same token, you're squatting as you pump. Every pump is a squat, and every squat, you start building up the lactic acid, your muscles start cramping up. What I've learned in the long run, pump tracks, in a very short space of time, someone who's trying to get into shape and is doing squats, trying to work on their abs, core, glutes, you name it, someone who's using a pump track, essentially you can ride a pump track honestly for 10 minutes and get the best burn workout on inline skates and roller skates that you have ever experienced. I don't know how it is on a bicycle or scooter nor skateboard. I have not ridden a pump track on either of those obstacles, but I do want to just note that pump tracks are phenomenal workout facilities. So that's some food for thought. Velo Solutions, that's VELO Solutions. Velo Solutions is a company I've been in touch with, and they would be more than honored to help implement and work with us in New York to bring some pump track facilities back to New York. I'm thinking of other elements that we could include into the park, but I think ultimately I would like to see, instead of just straight concrete aspects for a park that is going to be considered a green garden park, if you will, I would love to see, again, masonry. When I say masonry, not concrete, stone, pavers. Imagine, okay, I'll put it this way. This is the best way to put it. The Brooklyn Banks has a bunch of banks that are all brick in nature, right? And what I love about a brick concept is that when it gets wet, a lot of the moisture, so bricks are permeable, right? Because it's brick laid on top of, sometimes it's laid on top of a vapor moisture barrier, and that sometimes is then laid on top of maybe a sand or gravel, and then that is then laid on top of concrete, right? And the concrete might not be as dense or as thick, but the point is that it's also a softer when you fall on these obstacles, it's softer and more forgiving to the body. Concrete is one of the worst materials to fall on, even when it's smooth and polished. Yeah, these are just some thoughts that I have. I think that would be great for designing a skate park. And I think the maybe final and last thought that I have with regards to the Brooklyn Skate Garden and all parks that are public spaces in the future, and I can only think of One World Trade, aka the Freedom Tower, which technically and legally it's no longer the Freedom Tower, if anyone knows that. But during the design phase for the Freedom Tower, there was a contest where people can enter to design this. And I do believe that the city and the Parks Department, so whoever's involved, I got your contact, but I think it would be in everyone's best interest to host a competition for ideas, design elements, and maybe reward those individuals with a small cash prize, and maybe even, a plaque or an accolade or some sort of recognition, right? Because that credit goes a long way to maybe help further their career in whatever field they're in. I have a lot of dope ideas, and I would love to sit down and start sketching them out and give you a final layout, but I would need all of the statistics, data, and survey documents, the CAD files as well, that the city has procured for that site location. But those are my thoughts. I do believe the Brooklyn Skate Garden at Mount Prospect Park should host a, maybe 1-2 month long contest to get ideas and inspiration. Maybe people sign up and they, maybe they get a downloadable design kit so that their ideas can be properly considered. And I think also they should have to prove to some degree or to some extent, the same way I have to prove when I try to get into a new school or college, or when I have to apply for a new job or a new position, I have to prove to some degree that I am knowledgeable and understand the nature of the work or the discipline, right? But these are my thoughts on what we can do with the Brooklyn Skate Garden. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some feedback. And again, I do believe a design contest would be most fruitful and beneficial. And I would love more than anything to be a part of the design process and or consultation process for any skate park and even just any park for that matter moving forward.